So I'm apt to speak loud then. Not one of my greatest traits. So those bios are tricky. And just so I'm going to warn you, when I teach, and I teach the paramedics and I do medical, I like to pick on people. So hopefully you are participating in class. If not, then I have a way of extracting that and making it happen. So bios are tricky things. You just heard my bio read. So why are they tricky? You guys, how many here have had your bio read or had to prepare a bio and had it read? Anybody here done that? Why are they tricky?
Because you don't, well, in my case, when I was writing mine, I'm like, I want to sound good, but I don't want to sound like I'm bragging.
Oh, yeah. I'm amazing. Yeah. Did you hear how great I am? You guys should, I know you guys were looking at your paper, writing. You should have paid attention because I'm amazing. Couldn't you tell that by listening to this? Did you hear all the accomplishments I've made? Okay? So that's right. That's exactly right. You know, me and Donald Trump, we're about the best thing that ever happened to this country. So now that you understand that. So what's the other? So let's say you don't say how amazing you are.
It's also hard to explain really what you're interested in, what you're all about in a small little paragraph.
Okay, so I've prepared bios where they've read it, and this is Brett Christiansen. He's married to Susan Gunther and lives in St. George for the past 13 years. Okay? And that's the most important thing to me right there. That's really can sum it up in that. But as you guys are sitting there, what are you thinking?
It doesn't sound very cool.
Yeah. Why is this guy even worth listening to? Okay? He has no reason. He's worthless. You know, if that's all he can say about himself, he's got nothing. So I'm going to zone out. You know, sometimes I'll do that in meetings. I'll just fall asleep and that's it. I'm done for the rest of the meeting. I catch up on something I missed the night before. So also it allows you to some things in common. Some of you may have lived in Baltimore and realized, oh, this guy's from Hopkins. I know somebody there, and did you know this person? It allows you to interact with them a little bit more. So it's a tricky thing. You're going to find every time you write it, it's painful. The easiest thing is just to do the little short one, and I'd prefer to do that every time. So you're probably asking, why is a doctor talking to us? This is an entrepreneurial lecture, right? And we're here because we're entrepreneurs. We don't want to be doctors. We want to be doctors. We went to the biology department and done the pre-med program. Well, hopefully I have something that I can share with you today, something that you can take away that will make your life better, make you better at what you're going to do. And I'm going to tell you that hopefully you can understand this. This group is probably filled with inquisitive, curious people, so less so for this group than for other groups. Is that camera not going to get me unless I'm over here? I like to walk around, but if it... Okay, so she's doing it right there. Okay, so good. So I can wander then. So, you know, you're a curious group. Part of the reason that you're here. But in reality, what you get out of this today, and every other lecture you go to, is less a function of how good I am and what I can do for you as what your attitude is. Okay? And I've been around millions and millions of people who are learning. And in settings where I become a professional student, that's what I've done for the past 15 years. I figured I've taken over 1,000 tests, some of those major ones that determine your life, whether you pass them or not. And I've had to pay attention in countless lectures, and I've fallen asleep in a lot of them. And it's really a function of you. And there are people who come saying, okay, I challenge you. Are you good enough to teach me something? Or there are other people who are very curious. And try to maintain and make sure that you're always curious. Because the further you get in your education, the more you're going to become, you know what, I know this, I'm great, I've already heard this, you don't have much to tell me. You know, you came from this place, so thus I'm probably no more than you already. Okay? So it's up to you. You determine how much you're going to learn. In reality, just about every person you interact with is going to have something they can teach you. Might not be something great, but you can learn something from them. Something that they have done that's screwed up their life so that you don't make that same mistake. Okay? So, again, it's up to you. So an entrepreneur, you ask why? Is this showing up anywhere? Went to all that trouble to get it set up and... Okay. So the question is, what is an entrepreneur? So am I an entrepreneur because I'm a doctor? Or only entrepreneurs who are going to go into business? So the definition of an entrepreneur, which you'll see here in just a little while when it switches, is one who organizes, manages, and assumes the risk of a business or an enterprise. Okay? Just as a physician, I do that, but as the CEO of Southwest Emergency Physicians, I'm over the physicians who take care of all of Dixie Regional, also Cedar City. Those are people who work with me, that I'm the CEO of their group. And if any of you have ever tried to manage 20 people who are very talented, very smart, most of them think they may be the smartest person in the room, and their opinion should matter, and when that differs with the other 19 people who are the smartest people in the room, trying to get that to work. And that's tough. We have another 20 or 30 employees that work for us that I have to keep and manage, and that's difficult as well. I also I'm over intensive medicine for the southern part of Utah. I'm over the ERs, the ICUs, I'm over trauma, and all of that I have responsibility for. So from that standpoint, I'm an entrepreneur. And also, as was mentioned, I am an engineer as well, mechanical engineer, and I love to design and come up with a better way to do something. Every day at work, I work on processes that this is not working. Why is this not working? Well, let's change it. And so I've made 15 or 20 order sets that change the process of a patient when they enter the hospital until they leave the hospital. And so constantly I'm trying to work and come up with a better way to do something. I think that is a definition of an entrepreneur, someone who trying to find a better way to do something. Okay? So good, we have it working now. So I am an emergency physician. This is what I do. I love medicine. I think I have the best job in the world. Okay, I'm not here to talk you into doing medicine. Medicine is fantastic. You know, it's exciting. You're making a difference. Every day I go to work, I take care of people who either are dying or think they're dying, one or the other, and I can either comfort them and say you're going to be okay, or help make them so that they are okay. I think emergency medicine is the best field of all. I have a lifestyle. I'm never on call. I don't have a pager. I don't get calls at home except for all my neighbors who like to call me and say, hey, can you take a look at this? So I'm on call for my neighbors, but other than that, I'm not. And my neighborhood seems to be getting bigger and bigger. So, and also I'm in the middle of medicine where the exciting stuff happens. So I love my job in emergency medicine. And this is my day-to-day life. You know, you see some of these things up here, you go fishing or trauma or injury or beer bottles up the rectum or other things. It's there. It's a part of my day. I don't know what's walking through the door. It challenges my mind. And for me, a job is important where every day I go to work and go, I want to do something different today. And that's my job. So I want to talk a little bit about sorting here. Now we have inside of us the innate nature to sort things. And why do we do that? It starts when we're really young. You guys have just come from the biggest sorting tanks that exist, and that's high school. You're sorted there. We do that because our mind, the world is so big and so complicated that we have to make sense of it. And the way we make sense of it is we simplify it. Going, okay, this is overwhelming. You know, you look at the bucket of those buttons and go, there's disorder. What am I going to do with this? These are buttons. So we start putting them in containers. You know, and we get the pinks and the blues. And if you notice here, there's a pink one there that probably should be in here. And sometimes we get them in the wrong places, but that's okay. We categorize them. So in high school, you know, someone were to describe you. Who is he? What is he like? You know, what were you in high school?
That was me.
You were you. Okay. But if you're describing somebody else, so what is he? Oh, he's a skater dude. Ah, okay. That makes sense. Or why did he do that? He's a jock. Oh, he's a jock. Oh, he thinks pretty highly of himself. You know, he's and why was it? Well, she was a cheerleader. Oh, so she's hot and not very smart, right? You know, we categorize it. So we put them in the category, and that category further defines it down. We have an image where we can automatically put them there. And you have to be careful because when we categorize, we lose so much. So you've been categorizing your whole life, and I'm going to tell you to turn off that categorization. You have to do it to a certain extent, but take most of that away. Okay? Start looking at each person and don't put them in a bucket. There's this thing out that people say, what kind of person are you? I'm a red. Anybody here reds? Who in here are reds? Raise your hand. So you can raise your hand. Yeah, you're red. Who in here is yellow? Who are the peacemakers? Yeah, they're white. Who are whites? Okay, so this is a perfect example of categorization. In fact, there's a lot of tests out there that they take and all these ones, and I've taken all these tests. Well, what kind of person are you? Oh, I'm this kind of, I'm a leader because I'm in the upper left quadrant of this test that shows here, and it frustrates me because then people go, oh, that's what I am, so that's what I become, and that's what they are. And you have to be careful. I don't like the categorization because it limits us. And the problem is it causes us, part of the reason we want to think we're special. and we're amazing. So, if in Utah, what school do you go to? Well, that has a big impact. I went to BYU. So, I'm better than all the people at the University of Utah. Any Utah fans in here? You got red on. Are you a Utah fan? No? Snowboarder. Okay. Oh, you're a snowboard dude. Got it. Okay, so I'm better because I went to BYU, and it's obviously a better school, right? Highest ACT scores, highest GPA students entering, best placement in a lot of different programs. BYU's better. Well, no, I'm from the University of Utah. We're clearly better because our football team has beat you the last 4 years. It's clear, right? So we use what we're good at to say this person is not as good as me, and because I'm better than them, I'm a good person. And that never works. We're not good because we're better than somebody else in something. We're good because we're good. So stop the categorization to help yourself feel better about yourself. Just be the best you can be. You are you. And I like that. That's perfect. Okay, so who in here is from Cedar City? Raise your hands high. You proud of Cedar City? Okay, so about 8 of you, maybe a quarter of the class. I'm from Beaver. Okay, anybody in here from Beaver? Nobody from Beaver? Okay. So, anybody here from St. George? Raise them high. So 3. Anybody in here from smaller towns than Cedar City? Okay, so maybe about 5th of the class. Anybody in smaller towns than Beaver?
Beaver.
Beaver's 2,000 people. Where are you from?
Monroe.
Monroe.
I'm originally from Minnesota, but it's still a town smaller than Beaver.
Okay, in Minnesota, they have 10,000 lakes. There's no room for big cities, right? Anybody here from the big city? Where are you from?
Huntington Beach, California.
Huntington Beach, okay.
Las Vegas.
Las Vegas? Salt Lake, okay. So Huntington Beach, probably the biggest. You're the big dog here, okay? And Huntington Beach, you're from California. California is cool. California is cooler than Utah.
Subjective.
Yeah, although you talk to every person from California, and why are you going to Utah? It's not. We're that way. Okay, so I'm from Beaver. So other than Monroe guy, and that's from my grandparents. They came from Monroe, Elsinore. So I'm an Elsinore guy too. Elsinore, Monroe, Washburns.
Oh.
Yeah, Washburn. So I came from the small place, and so my whole life I've watched people go, "Oh, you're from Beaver," and I watch a little thing turn off in their mind, going, "He's from Beaver." He's smaller than me. Thus, I'm better than him, so he doesn't have much. He's not going to be much competition. Okay, I love that because they underestimate me. So I show up and I play him in any sport, and I beat him most of the time. Okay, I work hard. There's good things about being in every part. There's great things from being about Huntington Beach or from Salt Lake City. What are the great things about being from Salt Lake?
And I'm close to southern Utah.
Okay, so you love southern Utah.
No, it was nice to have a different type of competition up there. Much larger school that I went to, and being able to have a different perspective, and which is why I chose to come down here.
Okay, so for a bigger city, bigger competition, little things on a little higher level. You had access to museums and cultural things and concerts that were coming to Salt Lake City that don't necessarily come to Beaver. Okay? You may have had teachers who actually graduated from college and taught you English or math or whatever. Okay? So, Huntington Beach, what's the advantage of being from Huntington Beach? Besides really cool.
A lot of the things you just said, like county museums, national museums, obviously the ocean.
Surf's up, dude, right?
The average household income, which relates to what you just said, like you're automatically thinking on that scale,
Yeah.
You're dealing with costs that are just in that demographic.
Yeah, and it's a great. It's got the weather too, amazing climate. And my son went to Huntington Beach on his mission. My second son went to the Huntington Beach on his mission. Loved it. Fantastic place. Okay, some great things about being there. So, makes more money living in Huntington Beach, but also costs a lot more money. One of my classmates who graduated with me, he took a job that he thought he was making twice as much as me. And he came and visited and saw my home, and he went, "Wait, your home's twice as big as mine. Why is that?" The cost of living is huge. He can barely afford this small little house, and the cost of living changes. So it's all relative. Now, what about growing up in a small town? What was the advantage of growing up in Monroe? Okay, so the mountains. So Huntington Beach. How often did you go to the mountains in Huntington Beach?
Mostly just like maybe 2-3 times a year.
Okay, so you take a trip. You have to go to do it.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. How often do you go to the museum in Monroe? Well, there's a museum that probably has deer horns. You know, there's a big elk horn. I know, I've seen them. They've got a couple museums in Beaver, too. Okay, so there's advantages of being in a small town as well. Okay, you have to play on every sports team. So the sports team's not nearly as good as it is up in Salt Lake. And if you get on the sports team, if you're on the football team in Salt Lake, you're good. Okay? In Beaver, I had to play on every sport. I played on the football team. Loved it. I played on the basketball team. I was on the track team. Track team went at the same time as baseball. They needed people on baseball, so I played both. Okay? It was great, and I was really frustrated because my principal would let me start a golf team and a tennis team. Okay? I loved it. So I came out of there. I can play every sport. I may not be as good as somebody who's centered on this one, but if you pick 10 sports, I'll beat you at 9 of them, and you'll beat me at the one that you're good at because you went to the bigger school. So I'm well-rounded in that way. I love the outdoors. Before school, I'd go out and I'd shoot 2 geese and a couple of ducks, and I'd still get to school on time. Okay? I'd hop on my motorcycle, I'd drive up into the mountains, which were 15 minutes away, and I would camp out for a couple of days. It was really fun. There's advantages, but there's disadvantages. So I'm from Beaver, so I'm used to, I'm watching everybody when I tell them I'm from Beaver, to watch the look on their face go, really? You know, it's a funny name. People, even from New York, they're making fun of me. So watch and just be cautious. I'm going to hopefully convince you just a little bit of some of the things that we talk about. Watch the categorization. So you're either a big fish or a little fish. That's the mentality we like to look at. Are you a little fish? Are you a big fish? And be cautious because this paralyzes you. If you're the big fish, this is, I think, the record shark that was ever caught. It's huge. See the little guy off to the side there? Can you see his arm? Are you the big fish or are you the little fish? Are you the minnow? And if we feel like we're the little fish, then we spend our time going, I'm not good enough. I probably shouldn't do that. If we're the big fish, we spend so much time thinking we're great and amazing that we lose our ability to be good at what we do. So we always like to think we're the big fish. And it's been interesting as I have moved from town to town, and I have changed the town I've been in. So Beaver, you know, as we would date the Cedar girls, we'd drive over here because they had cute girls. You know, just watch, I was coming from the small town. If the best thing they can say about the town is we have the #1 water and taste, there can't be too much good there, right? We don't have a lot to brag about. But I would not trade it. It was a fantastic growing up. In fact, my wife, and she won't admit to it, but we were dating. She was a big city girl. She was American Forker, Alpine. And she would introduce me to her friends. We were all pre-med together. I have about 5 or 6 of them. This is my boy I'm dating. He's from southern Utah. Okay? I didn't get introduced to Beaver from Beaver. I got introduced from southern Utah. Why? Because she didn't want the Snickers that came from Beaver. But then as my grades were better than theirs, and I got in and they didn't, then it was, this is my boyfriend, husband, he's from Beaver. And if you laugh at him, go ahead, you're laughing at yourself. Okay? Because I just changed relative because of things that I had accomplished. It really wasn't about where I was from or this category, it was what I had done and what I had accomplished. So I went from Beaver, so I went to BYU, and it was a tough transition. My hardest class I've ever taken in my whole life. And I've had hard classes in medical school and residency. I had rotations where I was working 36 on, 12 off, 36 on, 12 off. My hardest class ever was English 115. Okay? Why is English 115 hard for me? Being from Monroe. Why was English 115 hard for me? My basketball coach is the English teacher. Okay? I was doing vocabulary words up through senior in high school. It was awful. Okay, he didn't know English, but he was teaching it. So it was tough, although I had a fantastic math teacher. So it was tough. So I got to BYU, and I struggled with some things, but I was better at other things. So I got to BYU. It's a big school, a lot of competition, and it took me a little while, and I ramped up, and I finally got going, and I hit my stride. And I loved it. So now I'm from BYU in Provo. So now at BYU, am I a big fish or am I a little fish? Okay, so now, how long does it take for you to establish residency in a state or a city? A year or 2. So I was there for 6 years. Most people go to school for 4 years. I'm a little slower because I come from Beaver. So it took me a little longer to get through. So I was there for 6 years. So by that time, I'm a little bit bigger fish because I'm at BYU, one of the best schools in the state, the best school in the state. One of the best schools in the state, one of many good ones. SUU is fantastic. I love your program here. I love what you guys are doing. Okay, so I did that. And one of the things Richard wanted me to talk about, and they asked me to talk about, was some of my attitudes of what got me through school and why I was able to do well in some things and have some accomplishments. And one of those is having to do with this. So I entered as a mechanical engineer. I was really good at math. Math was my specialty. English on the ACT, I got a 21. It was tough. Math, I got a 36. Okay, I was good at math, so I went into math. I had math things, which is engineering. I loved the problem solving, but I got halfway through, got married to my wife, tricked her. She thought she was marrying an engineer, and it just didn't feel right. And one day I was listening to a guy lecture, and he was a physician, and it just clicked. I was like, I didn't realize you could become a physician. They were born, they were in the town we were in, you didn't become physicians, they were just there. And once I realized you can become a physician, it clicked and it was clear to me. That's what I wanted to do. So I was 2/3 of the way through my mechanical engineering degree, and I went to the pre-med advisor and I said, I want to switch. He said, okay, let's switch you over, get you in these biology classes here, you have to find a way to stand out. And I said, no, I don't want to switch. He said, and you might not get in. In fact, you probably aren't going to get into medical school. They do it differently at BYU. Here, if you want to go, they're going to make you get in. At BYU, if you're good enough and we beat you to death and you survive, then you're good enough to get in. So I got told for years, you're not going to get in. You're not going to make it. You're not going to get into medical school. And he said, you're probably not going to get in. You got to switch to biology. And I said, but I love engineering. Can't I just stay in this and finish it? No, because engineers, they enter college, at least at BYU, with the highest ACTs and the highest GPA from high school. They leave college. Anybody guess where they rank on the GPA at the end of college? They're the lowest, okay? They're the lowest. And he said, if you want to get into medical school, you have to have a GPA, it's at least 3.7. 3.6 to 3.7. If you do engineering, they leave 2.8, 2.9, 3.0. And this is GPA suicide. And I said, but I want to do engineering. And he said, you can't. I'm not going to support it. Do what you're going to do, but it's stupid. It's a mistake. It's GPA suicide. And I said, but you tell me I need to stand out and be unique. And rather than just look like all the biology majors, he says, yeah, but find another way to do it. I said, well, how many engineers have you had apply from your program? He said, 0, because I discourage it. So I said, well, I'll be unique then. So it was a balance. And so I decided I'm going to stick with the engineering program and the pre-med and do them both at the same time. And it was hard, but I enjoyed the challenge. So it turned out, actually, my grades were fine. After being told 1,000 times I can't get in, I ended up getting accepted to, that's part of the reason it took me 6 years to get through, is because I had to do the pre-med at the same time, and engineering is not a short program. So I got accepted to Columbia University. At the time I got in, it was in the top 5 medical schools in the country. So it was not an easy thing to get in. I grabbed and I scratched and I clawed and did everything I could to try to make it work, and I barely got in. I got waitlisted and then got in. And so my pre-med advisor went, I knew all along you were going to get in. Will you be on my board and help me out and help me with all these other students to know what they can do? And I was like, oh, you idiot, I hate you. So I got in to Columbia, and it was hard. So I got there, and I looked at my class, and they gave the names of all the different schools, and I introduced myself, and the guy sitting next to me, he said, I'm from Harvard, where are you from? I said, I'm from BYU. Oh, NYU, I've got a friend that goes to NYU. And I said, no, BYU. BSU? Yeah. Boston State University? Yeah, I know somebody from Boston State. I said, no, BYU. I said, Brigham Young University. He's like, never heard of it. I'm from Harvard. Did I tell you that? I'm a big fish. You're a little fish. I'm a big fish. So all of a sudden, I went from BYU, where I was a bigger fish from all the Beaver people. I was the only one from my class that went to BYU. So I was a big fish coming from Beaver. Now I went to New York, and all of a sudden, I'm in this city that's huge. 12 million people. Here's my apartment right there. That's my apartment right there. George Washington Bridge. Columbia was a metropolis. This is Harlem, Spanish Harlem, and the city just goes forever. More people live in this building than live in Beaver. Okay? So it was a culture shock for me. The dean, I showed up, and the dean, when I interviewed, he said, "Why do you want to come here?" He said, "You're married. We only have 4 students in our full 4 years of 600 students who are married. That's unusual. Why do you want to come here?" And I said, "You have a good school?" He said, "Yeah, we have the best. I think we're the best in the country." And I said, "So I want to come here." And he said, "You've got a kid." I had a kid with me. I had a 3-year-old. He says, "We only have one other kid in the whole 4 years of the program. People don't bring kids to New York City. This is where single people come." And I said, I'm ready for it. I like to challenge. Bring it on." He said, "Okay, but it might be a mistake." We developed a great friendship and relationship. I was the token guy from Utah that they accepted. Okay? And it worked out great. So I got there and I was overwhelmed. 70% of my freshman class were from Ivy League schools. They were from Brown, they were from Princeton, Dartmouth, there were some from Yale, Georgetown. And that first day I thought, I am going to get destroyed. I'm so out of my league. I went from the engineering program where I graduated at the top of my class thinking, I've just killed myself. What am I doing here? Well, studied and studied and got the first series of tests back. The way medical school works is we would study, and then at the end of the month we would have a Monday where we would take the whole day of tests. And I got the first test back in my hardest class, and I looked and went, a B+. And then I looked at the guy from Harvard to the next to me and saw C-. Hey, I looked at this guy, C. It's like, I'm going to be okay. I might not be the top of the class, but I'm not going to be the bottom either. And so it turned out to work out great. I lived in New York for 4 years. How long does it take to establish residency? A year. It takes a year. Okay? Some states maybe 2, most states a year. So after a year, I was a New Yorker. Okay? So now I'm at Columbia. So am I a big fish or am I a little fish? I'm a big fish. Okay, I'm a pretty big fish. At that point, it was the biggest city in the country. LA now is bigger, if they count the big white area, but this is 12 million people in a little teeny spot, a 5-mile island there. And it's huge. For those who are religious, I was the ward mission leader of my ward, and I had 7 million non-members I was responsible for. Okay? As a ward mission leader, I had 30 full-time missionaries in my ward. Okay? It was big. We loved it. There were museums. It was fantastic. The cultural events that were there, the eating, everything. But it had some disadvantages. There was no grass. My 3-year-old kid, and I had another kid who was there, my son James, we couldn't let him play on the grass. There were little spots, but wherever there was grass, there were needles or condoms or razor blades. And so they were afraid to touch the grass, and they didn't for 4 years. They had a great cultural event, but there were no sports teams to be a part of. We were in Harlem, so my son could not go to kindergarten at the Harlem kindergarten. I was afraid he would die. So I had to pay $10,000 a year to put him in a private kindergarten. Okay? And that was tough, since I wasn't making any money. So I had to take out loans for that. So advantages, disadvantages. Just so you know, just so you realize, no matter how big you are, even Huntington Beach, New York City, see this little river right here? Oh, it's dead. So the river, Hudson River, New Yorkers, everybody who lives on this side of the river is inferior. You are lesser people. We are the biggest fish that exists. People come to New York because they are competent and the best. Okay? Just so the rest of you are less. If you lived right here in this house on this side, you're still from Jersey. And you're not as good as I am because I'm from New York City. Okay? So they have this complex. They've categorized it. It makes it nice. Even California. California's pretty good, but not as good as us. Because we're New York City. We're the business center of the world. We're the theater arts center of the world. Okay? You come to Juilliard, you come to all these places, and that's where the best come to learn. So now I'm a New Yorker. Okay? I'm a big fish. I'm that shark. It came time for residency. I applied, and the nice thing about being a big fish is now it's easier to transfer to a different pond that's a similar size. So I applied for residency. It was hard for me to get into Columbia. It was hard. And so I applied to residency, the best residency program in the country, the best hospital in the country. Anybody know the best hospital in the country? Johns Hopkins. U.S. News and World Report says so, so it must be true. Okay? For 20 straight years, since 1980 something. They had 1 year in there where they were number 2, then they're back on number 1. Okay, so I went to Johns Hopkins. So now, am I a big fish or am I a little fish?
Still big.
Okay, getting bigger, right? As far as medicine world goes. So, big fish. I went there, fantastic time, great. I thought Columbia was a big medical mecca. Hopkins is amazing. It just goes for blocks, and their research and the new things they're generating, it was fantastic to be there. So I loved it. There for 3 years. And then, after that, I took a job. My wife had followed me to Harlem. And when I applied for medical school, she said, you can apply for medical school anywhere but Johns Hopkins because it's in a bad neighborhood. And it was worse than Harlem. Okay, we lived away in a better neighborhood, and then I would drive in 30 minutes to get there. So since that, I let her choose. She says, we're going back home, going back to Utah. I figured we were going to Salt Lake, LDS Hospital. I came back, interviewed at all the places in town, and because I was a big fish, I got job offers at every place I went, and I came down here to Southern Utah, and I fell in love with the hospital. I fell in love with the group that was there, and I took a job. We laughed as we drove through. Wouldn't it be funny if we went to New York and ended up in Dixie? Then it was that little small hospital, and we ended up there, and it's been fantastic. I've loved it. So now I'm back at Dixie. So now I'm back at Dixie. As I come to Dixie, am I a big fish or a little fish? But I've come from these other places, so I'm the big fish coming to these little minnows, right? But the thing about it is, I'm still, out of all the places I've been, the places that had the biggest influence on me is here. Okay? I'm still a Beaver boy. I'm not a New Yorker. I'm not a Hopkins guy. Everything's integrated into me, but I'm still a Beaver boy. So, the things that we take, the things that you experience, take them into you. Don't let yourself be categorized. You're not a big fish, you're not a little fish, you're not a New Yorker, or you're not a SUU. Those are part of you that you're taking and making the best that you can of you. But don't look at people in those categories, and don't find a way. Everybody's equal to you, and they have something to share with you. Okay? That's one of the most important. If you can learn that lesson, you're going to find you enjoy the people you're around, you're going to enjoy the situations you're in more, and you're going to quit being paralyzed by either feeling like you're the little guy or I'm the big guy, and thus there's nothing for me to learn. Okay, so it's not the size of the fish. In this water, this is up in Alaska, this is an ocean bay, there's both the sharks and the minnows. Which one of them is the happiest? I suspect they're both very happy. Do you enjoy the water that you're swimming in? Make choices so that you're swimming where you want to be, not so that you can be the kind of fish you want to be, but so that you are happy. Now, are you happy swimming in this water? If you're a shark, if you're the biggest shark, are you happy? No. If you're a minnow? No. Find a place where you're happy. Find a place, the water that you're swimming in is enjoyable. SUU, that's why my son transferred from BYU down to SUU. The water for him was looking more like this. Okay, you're going to choose a job, all of you. How many hours are you going to work in your life? This is how many hours per year these different countries work. The U.S. is one of the top workers. Mexico's number 1. About 2,000 hours a week or a year, what will you'll work? You'll work for 50 years. That's 100,000 hours. You're going to spend 100,000 hours doing some kind of job. You have an educator here, a professor. He's going to spend a huge amount of time. That's just if he works 40 hours a week. I suspect he works more than that with grading the papers and thinking about things and doing emails because he loves what he does. Like, you can tell he enjoys it. You know, he's getting chemotherapy. I'm sorry to hear about that, but hopefully it's working. Getting chemotherapy, but still teaching you. I mean, that's some commitment and dedication. So he obviously loves what he does. So 100,000 hours, find something that you love. If it takes you 16 years of education to do that, that's okay. If you can do it in 2-week on-the-job training, fine. But make sure that you love it because you're going to be doing a lot of it. Okay? So one of the points they asked me to talk about is making choices. And you've all heard the poem by Robert Frost. Probably most of you haven't memorized. 2 roads diverged in the yellow wood. Sorry, I could not travel both. But be one traveler along, I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it looked in the undergrowth, to where it bent in the undergrowth. So here's the 2 roads. We're faced with choices every day. Some are bigger than others. Take the path to the right or to the left. Okay? There are people that have decision problem issues. This is an important thing. How do you make choices? And what do you do with the choices that you make? And what do you do when you make a wrong choice? So there are people who are sitting right at that crossroads of this, and they're looking, going, which road do I take? Oh, that looks so good on the right, but the one on the left, look at that. That's just as good. Can't decide. So they'll sit there forever, for the rest of their life maybe, and not make a choice. Decision paralysis. Because it's so hard to choose. They don't want to miss one way or the other, so they miss them both. Okay? If you're one of those people, choose a pathway. There are some people who, they're just, whichever side of the road they're riding on, they'll go that way. They don't make any choice. They don't give any thought to it. They just get down there, and wherever it ends up, they end up, and they end up in trouble. You know those kind of people. I see them in the emergency room all the time. They're just going down the road. There are some people who, they'll go down a pathway, and they'll spend their whole life going, I wonder what that other pathway took. I'll bet it was going to be better. I end up with this, and I end up with and this, and I should have done the other way. Idiot. That was a mistake in my life. I wish I could go back. And they spend their whole life wasted, just like the person at the front of the pathway who never chose. They spend their whole life wishing they had taken another pathway. Ruins their life. Okay? Then there are those who look at the pathway, they stand there and they go, okay, this has got this. This has this benefits. Let me look at some people. Let me call somebody who went down that road. Oh, yeah. Oh no, I can't live with that. Yeah, that sounds good. So they go this way. They make the best educated choice you can, and you live with it. Okay? Occasionally, you may get down there and go, whoa, this wasn't what I thought. I don't want to be an engineer. So you backtrack, and you go down the other way. But once you make a choice, make the best of it. Don't spend your life regretting the choice. Wherever you're at in that choice, you can make it work. Okay? Then there's another pathway, go down that way. So you can fix or make a difference in whichever way you go. So don't have pathway paralysis. Okay? Make a good choice. Now, one of the models that I have, if I can't choose a pathway, and I have two that are before me, and I've gotten all the information that I can, I've talked to my friends, I've looked at information, I've done searches and going, okay, this would be good, or this would be good, I can't choose. There's two different options most of the time. Sometimes there's really not, but sometimes there is. And I've found for me personally, so the pathway on the left looks great. It's beautiful, it's got sun coming in through the branches above, it's well paved, it's safe, there's sunlight at the end of the pathway. I know it's good. Also, because it is that way, there's 10,000 other people going down that pathway. If they get to the same crossroads, they look and go, that one's too hard, right? Who's taking this pathway? It's too hard. I might fall. Okay. So what I found for me personally is if you're not choosing a pathway because it's harder, not because you think it might be best for you, but because it's harder of the two, I found I'm always happier if I choose the road less traveled or the harder pathway. Okay? The reason being is because nobody has chosen that because it's harder, and because it's harder, the end result oftentimes puts you in a category where you have choices. If there's 10,000 other people who've gone this way, then there's 10,000 other people looking for that job or qualified for that job that you have. But if you go the harder way and get extra training, if you get up earlier in the morning to do this, if it requires this, when I chose residency, I had a hard time. I was headed orthopedics. I considered plastic surgery, considered neurosurgery. I did an ER rotation and went, that was the most fun I've ever had. So as I interviewed at 25 ER places. And I looked, 7 minutes, okay. So I interviewed at a number of these places, and there were some who bragged that we only have 15 shifts a month, and Hopkins said, we're going to work you 29 days a month, 12-hour shifts. Some days you won't even have a day off. Which one do I take? Hopkins. Because I want to come out of there well-trained. Okay? I want to have everything I need. So the harder pathway will give you more opportunities in the end if you're willing to do it. Okay, so I have just a few things in my last few slides right here. So a couple of other principles I want to pass on to you. First of all, if you say you value something and you do not spend time doing that, you don't value it. You're just talking to yourself. You're blowing wind. Okay, if something really is important to you, then you're going to make sure that you schedule and spend time doing that. So write down the list of your values, the things that you value. I have 18 things that I have on my values list. My wife is right towards the top. My skills and talents are down towards the bottom. That's why I spend more time with my wife than I do golfing and painting. And wherever you value, you'll spend time doing it. So make that list and make sure that you're not spending all your time doing this thing that really isn't on your values list. And make sure you heavy load that with the things that are really important to you. Okay. Another just model for success that I wanted to pass on for you, for all of you entrepreneurs. And this has made all the difference. You know, from the Robert Frost problem to Roles Diverged, the path I chose made all the difference. The motto that I live by is I do things sooner than expected, more than is needed, and better than required. Okay? And it doesn't have to be a lot, just a little bit. Let's say you had an assignment that is due in class. It's due in 3 weeks. And it's an assignment that takes 3 hours to do. Okay? It's a 3-hour assignment. You know it's going to take 3 hours. So the majority of people, they say, okay, I've got 3 weeks to do this. I'm going to put it off. I'm going to do this. And then about a day or two before they start working on it. If something bad happens, then they can't complete that. But it's still going to take you 3 hours no matter what you do. So my motto is, okay, this is going to take me 3 hours. Do I have time tonight? If I do, I'll take those 3 hours, I complete the assignment, and I turn it in tomorrow. I still have 3 weeks left. I've turned that in. It didn't take me any more time. It wasn't any harder, but I did it sooner than was required. Even if you turn it in a day early, the teacher still goes, hey, this was turned in early instead of on the day of it. In fact, that's how I met my wife. I was in Math 110 class, and she noticed that the teacher would instruct on the topic. It's due next week. I would turn in my assignment for that day on that topic that she'd just done. I'd already done the assignment before she even taught, because she was a bad teacher. I just used the book. So I would turn it in, and she went, who is this guy who's turning in his assignment before it's even done? And she needed a little help, so she asked me to help her, tutor her for math. Okay? So opportunities. If the teacher sees, wait, I signed that yesterday and you turned it in tomorrow or 2 weeks early or even 2 days early, he's immediately in his mind, he's going to go, I've got 70 people in this class, but I'm watching this guy, this girl right here. She turned in early. And you do that every time and it's a good score. Immediately you stand out. Okay? If you do something better than is required or more than is needed, an example would be a guy who was working on my home. I had a lot of subs working on my home. I was a general contractor. I just wanted to do that. And so I have a guy who did $40,000 worth of stonework around my house. He spent months there. At the end of that, he paid an art student, an art guy who graduated with an art degree, to come and paint the corners so that they blended and matched together. This was after the job was done. Took 1 hour. But in my mind, I was like, whoa, here's a guy who went above and beyond and made it just look great. Didn't have to do it. And so I was more excited by that 1 hour of the art guy than the 3 months of $40,000 I'd spent putting the stone on. He just did a little bit more than was needed, and it made him stand out. So when I send somebody, hey, I have a stone guy you have to get him because he's good. Because he did a little bit more than was required. If you do a lot more, you really stand out. If you do a little bit more, you still stand out. And if you do that consistently, you're going to have success. You're going to be the one promoted in your job. You're going to be the one who gets the contract. You're going to be the one who is asked to do things. Okay? Those 3 things, if you do those 3 things, you're going to stand out. If you do one of them, you're going to stand out. If you do all 3 of them, you're really going to stand out. Okay? So, in conclusion, the take-home points that I have an attitude of learning. Don't close your mind. Give everybody a chance. They have something to share with you. They have something to give you. Okay? The second thing is, what kind of fish are you? How about a happy fish? Doesn't matter what size the fish is, but be a happy fish and choose the water you're swimming in yourself. Don't just get dumped in some body of water and be happy with that. Find the body of water you want to be in and be there, because that's where you're going to be happy. Don't categorize. Let everybody be as good as they can be. You know, like I said, I enjoy watching people categorize me because they're not sure what to do with me now. He's from Beaver, but he went to here and here and here, and so it confuses them. Well, it's not what I have done or where I have been, but what lies within me and what am I going to do? What's my potential? What am I going to do tomorrow? It really doesn't matter what I did yesterday now. That's past. What am I going to do tomorrow? What difference am I going to make tomorrow, and who am I going to impact, and what difference am I going to make? What about that next patient that comes through the door? The one yesterday is gone. Instead of going, okay, I saved his life, now he's done all this, that's in the past. What's going to happen tomorrow? Am I prepared and ready to take care of this next one that comes through the door, and can I make a difference in their life? Okay? Choose your pathway carefully, and don't be afraid of the road less traveled. It's a wonderful road most of the time, and if you get down there and go, it's not, you can always backtrack or make a choice. Again, my motto I just talked about, and then match the things that you love with the things with you spending your time. And after all that I've said, it doesn't make a difference if this isn't in order. Okay? It's all about your family. And you're at the start of this, you're at a point where you can make any choice you want. It's a fun time. I love this phase of your life. You can become and do anything you want to do. The only thing that will stop you is you. You're the only person who can prevent you from becoming anything. And I promise you. If a beaver boy can, you can. You can do better than I do. Okay? You are great. You are wonderful. And you're going to make a difference if you let yourself. Okay? But don't let all of that success get in the way of this. The greatest joy and happiness you're going to find in that beautiful water is your spouse and your family and the family that you have right now. And so those are some of the messages that I was asked to share, wanted to share with you. And probably not time for questions, but thank you. Appreciate it. Let me come.